the thought that kept going through my mind was I thought this was all about Black Lives Matter. And I thought that that's what the people who are out there on the streets ostensibly demonstrating. I have nothing against demonstrations. We have a right to do that. That right is enshrined in the Constitution, the right to peaceably assemble, with the emphasis on peaceably. And yet, the irony that in the midst of this Black Lives Matter demonstration, an innocent black man gets killed. Some might say, well, it was just, collateral damage, and they didn't know. Of course they knew. I mean, how could you not know that he's black? There's no question but that in spite of all the yammering and all the lip service being given to the slogan, Black Lives Matter, and I'm not talking about the organization, I'm talking about the slogan and the meaning behind it. I suppose there are many different meanings behind it. Look who gets killed in the process, a black man. Now I want you to listen to, this is from a Democratic state representative, John DeBerry Jr., and his message, which may surprise you to know, was aired in the convention last night. He is speaking about this insanity of racially motivated hatred and destruction that's going on in our country right now. And this is not edited. This is the 7-minute speech that he gave on race in America. Listen.
Because I continue to hear references to what I saw in growing up in this country and growing up in the state of Tennessee as I walked with my father and worked with my father here in the state of Tennessee, in Memphis, Tennessee, and across this state and across this country, in the middle of what has been referenced to on several occasions, the civil rights movement. And, people continue to refer to this, but I saw it. I saw men and women stand with courage and integrity and class, and they changed the world. They changed the world because what the world could see in them was the lie that was being told about them. I am one of those individuals who walked in back doors because the law said I had to. I'm one of those individuals who rode on the back of the bus, on the back seats that were not cushioned because the law said I had to. I went to the water and drank colored water because the law said I had to. I went to a school where everybody looked like me and the country was divided and segregated because the law said that I had to. So all of these things we continue to refer to are the things that me and my generation lived. We saw it for ourselves. We're not reading it in the history books, but we lived it. I went with my father when he and our neighbor got one of those I am a man signs and went downtown Memphis and watched him stand there proudly with Dr. King and other men and women, black and white, who had enough courage to stand up against what was wrong. And the way they did it, they had on their suits, their shirts, their ties, their hats, and if it was cold, their overcoats. They locked arms and they marched peacefully. And Dr. King stood for that which was peaceful. Because the world took a look at what was happening in Memphis, in Chicago, in Detroit, in Washington, D.C., and all over this country, we changed the entire world. And we changed it because those men and women had enough guts, integrity, enough citizenship and love of country, because my father was a Korean War era soldier, as many of those other men and women were. They didn't beg for anything. They didn't beg for citizenship. They demanded it.
Let's pause for just a minute. This is so good. I don't want to interrupt it, and I apologize for that. But if you're just tuning in and you're not sure who this man is, he is a Democratic representative. His name is John J. DeBerry Jr. He is from Tennessee, widowed with 2 children, and he's a member of the Church of Christ in Memphis, and he's a Democrat. So he's speaking as a Democrat, as a black man, on the issue of race in this country, and the speech was given last night at the Republican convention. So let's keep listening.
They didn't beg for anything. They didn't beg for citizenship. They demanded it because they were American citizens who paid taxes, who raised children, who paid house notes and rent, and did everything they were supposed to do so that they could demand from this country and its Constitution those things that they were supposed to have. How did they do it? They did it by standing like men and women of integrity and class and common sense and values. When the riot started and folks started burning stuff down, that's when my father took my arm and we left. We left because that was not what we were there for. That was not what Dr. King was there for. That was not what others who are famous in the civil rights days were there for. This was not peaceful. It was not part of our movement, and it only hurt everything. My family raised money and sent my dad to Washington for that march. Well, that man stood there and said that he wanted his children judged by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. And all we do in America right now is talk about color. Every issue is about race, it's about color. Instead of us sitting down at the table like men and women of common sense and common justice, and understanding that our enemies are looking with a greedy vigilance upon us as we tear ourselves apart eternally. They have been watching us for 50 years, preparing step by step by step by step for us to kill ourselves. And I may not be back here next year. And I'm sure everything I say is going to be misconstrued and misquoted and used against me in November. Fine. Because I stand for my father's legacy. I stand for the men and women who acted like they had some sense and some courage and changed this country by being men and women who stood for something. If we don't start standing for something, don't you know that the people who are looking at what's happening in Washington, in Detroit, in Portland, and Seattle, they're getting emboldened because we act like a bunch of punks, too frightened to stand up and protect our own stuff. You tell me that somebody got the right to tear down property that Tennessee taxpayers paid for? That American taxpayers paid for, and somebody has the right to destroy it, deface it, and tear it down? What kind of people have we become that we can't protect our own stuff? Peaceful protest ends peacefully. Anarchy ends in chaos. And what we see happening right now, any of us with any common sense whatsoever, know that what we see is not peaceful. So we can continue to fool ourselves and mix with words and use rhetoric and public relations in order to frost this stuff over and put a nice picture on what we see that is frightening. I have a nephew who is a policeman who talked about getting attacked the other night. You're telling me that somebody has the right to throw feces and urine in the face of those that we as taxpayers pay to protect us, and that's okay? What has happened to us? If we don't get this right now, I've got grandchildren. I don't want to see the country we're going to have 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. If we don't start acting like we got some guts, right now, brethren, sisterin, friends, colleagues, right now.
I cannot add anything to that. Anything I might add would just detract from the greatness of that message that you just heard. Amazing and clear and to the point and true, all of it true. That was Representative John J. DeBerry Jr., a Democrat, speaking last night at the Republican convention. I can't add anything to that. I'd like to hear what you think about that. My number is 888-914-9149, 888-914-9149. Do you disagree with him? Could you disagree with him? Cyrus, what was your reaction to that speech?
I thought it was amazing. I thought it was absolutely on point. I've never heard of this guy before.
Yeah, I haven't either.
And I respect him and I like him very much from that 7 minutes that we just played.
Right.
And I think it's really cool that you played that in its entirety It wasn't edited. We're not giving you sound bites. We're giving you the whole thing here, and I don't think that exists anywhere else in radio or television. I mean, that was awesome. Well done.
Well, I mean, I can't take any credit for it. I'm just the guy who said, let's play this. But it is electrifying, and what he's saying is correct. No question about it. I mean, honestly, how could anybody disagree with that? I know some people do, sadly, because it gets in their way. He was right when he said that anarchy leads to chaos. I think it goes much further than that. Anarchy leads to chaos, leads to violence, leads to death. And that is something we're seeing played out over and over again. And the thing is, and I'm glad he raised this issue so pointedly, and it's under the guise of being concerned about race. I really don't think that maybe a large percentage, hard to say, I don't know, of the people out there who are yammering on about Black Lives Matter, they don't really personally care about that because some of them are far too busy looting and burning and smashing and occasionally, killing people in the process, some of whom are black. But I also don't think that they really mean that, because what they really want, they don't want what he was describing as the peaceful non-resistance, peaceful resistance, the non-violence that was espoused and carried out by Martin Luther King and all of those men and women, the sisterin and brotherin, as he put it, who stood there with him. And they were non-violently opposing power that said, if you're black, you have to sit in the back of the bus. If you're black, you can't drink at this water fountain. If you're black, you have to use that restroom over there. You're not allowed to mix with white people. And that's the way it's done. That's the way you resolve a problem like that. We've seen it happen. This that we're seeing now is not that. These people are not freedom riders. These people are not doing anything noble or good, certainly not doing anything heroic, being out in the streets with guns and shooting fireworks at police officers and torching police cars and vandalizing buildings and spray painting BLM all over everything they can. There's nothing heroic or good about that. And it's not going to accomplish anything other than to fan the flames of what could become, I hate to say it, could become another civil war. And we've been down that road before. And it didn't work. And think of all the lives that were lost in the process. And that was a much more genteel and much more cultured time compared to the present day. I mean, give you an example. During the time of the Civil War, when Southern soldiers and in particular officers were captured in battle, the officers routinely, they would be sent north and they would be in cities like Columbus, Ohio. There was a big area here in Columbus where prisoners in the Civil War from the South would be kept. And the officers were simply paroled every day. They were given a parole which was on the basis of their word, on my honor, I promise I'm not going to try to escape. And so the Southern officers would be free. They could roam the city. They could come and go, eat in restaurants. They would be unmolested. And then at sundown, they would have to report back to the internment camp. And they did, because they kept their word. Their word meant something to them. That would be unthinkable nowadays. Can you imagine? So I said a minute ago, nothing I could add to this would add anything. It might only detract. And I feel as though maybe I should just let his words ring in your ears for a while and stand on their own. Kalen has posted a link to that speech so you can see it for yourself. I encourage you to share it with people. Cyrus, have your kids heard that speech yet? Have you played it for them?
No, not yet. Yeah,
I think kids should hear that.
Yeah, I think so too. Yep, absolutely.
I mean, it's almost, I know it's not a Gettysburg Address. I know, but I think it's approaching that level of greatness in terms of the message and the way it was delivered. Very powerful.
Yeah, it's so great. Him talking about when the violence came to his city, they left. His dad said he grabbed me by the arm and we left.
That's
right. It no longer represented what with their message, and so they left. That takes more guts.
Mm-hmm.
Just a very powerful.
It is, and it's a message that I just don't know if it will be heard by enough people. I mean, thankfully we're able to broadcast it nationally on relevant radio, And my hope is that all of you listening right now, go to the show Twitter feed, @PMadridShow, grab the link to this video. You notice there was no rah-rah, sis-boom-bah for politics. There was nothing about promoting a candidate like Donald Trump. There was none of that. It's just a straight-up message about the sickness we are gripped by in this country, the sickness of racism that's rampant in every direction. And he nailed it. And so I encourage you, do your civic duty. Honestly, do your civic duty and grab the link to this video and put it out there on your Facebook page. Text it to your friends and family. If you're on Twitter, put it on Twitter. You can retweet it from the show Twitter feed if you want to, @PMadridShow. But by all means, please get this message out there. Maybe, just maybe, somebody who's getting ready to go out tonight or tomorrow night to loot and vandalize might hear it and might stop and think about it and just might change his or her mind. White or black, doesn't matter. Just might change that person's mind. I don't know what else to say. But thank you. I don't think that Representative DeBerry listens to the Patrick Madrid Show. If you do, Representative DeBerry, I just want to tell you thank you. You did something really good and really great, and I'm grateful to you for that. This is the Patrick Madrid Show on Relevant Radio. I'll be right back.
For more of the Patrick Madrid Show, visit relevantradio.com/Patrick.